Okay, in this video we're going to talk about synthesis and hydrolysis reactions. Now, with organic molecules, these all contain carbon. So some of the exceptions of organic molecules we call, CO2 and carbon monoxide, or CO. These we call inorganic. However, other carbon-containing molecules are organic. And one thing that's important to know about carbon is that it's electroneutral. It shares electrons, but it doesn't gain or lose electrons because it's able to hold onto its electrons pretty well. Now it can form up to 4 different covalent bonds with other elements, and carbon is unique to the living system. So we have carbon-based life forms here on Earth, and a lot of the molecules that make up our body are carbon-containing organic compounds like carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So in the following videos, what we'll do is actually go into more detail on the structures and functions of each of these major types of biomolecules. Now, many of these biomolecules or carbon-containing compounds are actually polymers. And a polymer is a chain of similar units, or monomers. So when you put lots of monomers together, they actually form a polymer. And they're synthesized in a variety of mechanisms. They're synthesized by dehydration synthesis, and they're broken down by hydrolysis reactions. So if you're going to make a polymer, this is a dehydration reaction. If you're going to break apart a polymer into lots of its monomers, it would be a hydrolysis reaction. Now, dehydration synthesis is actually where you are taking 2 monomers and making a polymer. But what's fascinating about this particular type of reaction is that water is gained in the reaction itself. So what happens is the hydroxyl group on one monomer can react with the hydrogen atom on another monomer. And what happens is that water is formed in the process, so that your product is actually 2 monomers linked with an ester bond. This is this little O here. And that water is gained in this reaction. And what's pretty interesting too is that some of the water that you urinate out in urine actually comes from these types of building up reactions or dehydration synthesis reactions where you're making polymers in your body and water is formed in the process. Now the opposite of this is hydrolysis. And hydrolysis is where you would take a polymer and then with water, you actually would use water to break up that polymer into its individual monomers. So essentially it's just the reverse reaction here. So what happens is that you would add a hydroxyl group to one monomer and then add a hydrogen atom to another monomer to split them up. And so now you have your constituent components here. Now an example of this is actually where glucose and fructose can be used to make sucrose, or sucrose can be broken down back into fructose and glucose. So both glucose and fructose are considered monomer sugars. So glucose is a monomer type of sugar, fructose is also a monomer. And you can actually add these together through a dehydration synthesis reaction where water is released, and what you end up with then is a new polymer type of molecule called sucrose. We call this a dimer because it's actually made of 2 different monomers together, but it's still considered a polymer because you have at least 2 or more of these monomers linked up. And the opposite reaction is a hydrolysis reaction where we can break apart sucrose with the consumption of water, and what we end up with then is the constituent components, fructose and glucose.